Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here. It's Monday. It's the 3 to 4 block, and we're talking about Hawaii, the state of clean energy, because when in doubt, talk about energy, don't you think?
Always.
This is McKibbin Mist. He's purchasing and contracts manager and the leader of the design team.
That's very generous.
One of the
David,
members of the
you.
design team
Yeah.
for Gentry Homes builders, whatnot. Okay, and today we're going to talk about the perfect energy home. And this springs out of a home that the BIA, Building Improvement Association, created in Kaimuki a couple of years ago, at least in my mind, where they put in everything. It was actually, the property belonged to somebody, and BIA used it as a kind of sample home. And they put in everything they could put in to make it energy efficient. But that was 2 years ago, and maybe things have changed.
Well, what's interesting about housing, we've been housing ourselves for thousands of years. So the housing industry does change a little slower than most industries, I would say. But there are innovations that have happened since then. Probably the most notable is that LED lighting has come sort of into the affordable range. That's probably the newest thing. But that was a great house, and one thing that's highlighted by that house is that there's so many different technologies that you can put in a house, and not every property is gonna go with the exact same scenario. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of shirt.
Let me try to remember. I mean, there's a bunch of things. I went over there a couple of times. I actually made a movie, for OC16 of that house. It's still on YouTube. Let's see. First of all, it was the wind, the way the air flow was directed through the house, where the windows were located, where they were openable. There was no air conditioning that I remember in that house.
They put some in the bedrooms.
In the bedroom, right.
Yeah.
That's the only place.
And they'd split them so that you could turn one on but not the other one on. And
yeah.
the cross ventilation that you're talking about that's one of the biggest benefits that we have living in Hawaii with the trade winds.
You know, this was in Kaimuki, which gets hot and which isn't all that windy, and yet that was a big feature in the house to take advantage of what wind there was in Kaimuki.
Yeah, no, it makes a big difference. How was it? Was it cool?
Oh, it was very cool. I saw it when they were first building it, and insulation was important too. To keep the temperature balanced. That was very important. And they used all kinds of new techniques in putting in the insulation. Let's see what else. This is not an order of importance, but I was really interested in the fact that they drained water off the roof.
Yeah, that's...
And they had this kind of special thing to collect the water, and they would use the water to water the lawn.
Yeah.
And the lawn was really beautiful, even in construction. It was a good lawn.
That certainly gets complicated, but that's a huge. We'll talk about the future later, but that's sort of the carrot that everybody's chasing right now.
Water.
Yep.
Yeah. They also set up just going by recollection, but they also set up an aquaponics facility.
Yeah, I remember
on the side of the house. It was not very big, but it was great, and it wasn't working yet, but that was the plan. They had all the pieces there. That was impressive. But I think the thing that I liked that sticks in my brain about it was that they created the house with due regard for the flow of air and people, and everything. Every room, every door, every window was all dedicated to trying to find the best way to flow things through. And you could feel it even in the early days of construction, that it was sort of open to the elements.
Yeah.
It's like, you and I were talking before, and I've seen houses, we've all seen houses like this out of the 50s in Hawaii when, it's stone, it's lava. Mm-hmm. And it's open, and big lanais, and the wind could come right through, and it was like heaven on earth to be sitting on that lanai.
Oh, those are great houses.
Yeah.
Yeah, the architects of the 50s and 60s and 70s, I guess the oil prices were expensive then too.
Yeah.
And so they really focused on making sure that those houses were energy efficient. It's funny, I live in a house that was built in the 50s currently, and my electric bill is $56 last month.
So with PV?
No air conditioning, no PV. It has solar hot water heater on it, so that was a retrofit item.
Yeah.
We have a refrigerator and a washing machine.
That's all.
No dryer, no dishwasher. You know, we probably have 6 light bulbs in the whole house. So there's not a lot of draw on it. So they did know how to make them energy efficient back then, but that was one of the things we were talking about. Do you want it? How energy efficient do you want it? What do you want to sacrifice for that energy efficiency? I mean, we're living in a modern age. We don't really want to give up all of our modern conveniences. I don't want to walk to work. I like to drive.
Yeah. Well, you know, I got to update myself. Comes toward your direction in Gentry. So ThinkTech went on another shooting expedition to the construction site for the Navy housing in Kaneohe.
Okay.
The Marine housing in Kaneohe. And Forest City was doing it. And they took us through this huge number of houses. This is a big project.
They did a lot of houses out there.
A lot of houses.
I don't remember how many, but
money,
I think more than 1,000.
Yeah,
yeah,
it was. And they were, you know, they were substantial houses too. These were houses you wouldn't mind living in at all.
They're beautiful houses.
And the guy, I forget his name right now, but he took us through and he showed us all the little pieces about how they had thought this through and that through, and they thought a lot of things through. They were very akamai about how to do this. Struck me also they spent a lot of money on those things.
Certainly.
It wasn't like the house you're describing out of the 50s. It was like everything was special, upgraded. Everything was good. Just a footnote on that is that you know, usually military people, they get a housing allowance, and what Forest City and I guess its partners did was they got a long-term lease from the Marine Corps, from the federal government, and they would pay the federal government a certain amount of money, and then the Marines who lived in these houses paid them
their housing allowance.
Their housing allowance, and that's, you know,
so that's how they cash flowed it.
You had sort of imprinting a business concept on a government concept, and it worked. I thought it worked well. But anyway, I mean, the case there is that it was really up to the science as much as they could make it. It was all sort of showcase kinds of things. This was, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, maybe more.
Those are good houses too. One of the things that you said is they seem to be thinking a lot.
Yeah.
And fortunately, our architects have been taught in the last few years to think a lot. And so there are a lot of them that are out there thinking. They're thinking up new solutions and really cognizant about how they're allocating their resources. That's probably the biggest thing about building efficient housing. The number one factor in efficient housing is the square footage. So every square foot that you take out of the house, you don't have to light it, you don't have to cool it.
Touché.
So that's probably the biggest efficiency, and that's one of the reasons that we're sort of on the forefront of energy efficiency and energy efficient design, is that we're designing for somebody who, as we all know, in Hawaii, it's hard to make a living here, and so the living that you do make needs to go as far as it possibly can go, and our buyers are those buyers that need it to go as far as it can possibly go. So our houses are very efficient from a space planning standpoint, and we have a 5-bedroom house that's 1,650 square feet.
So how do you do that?
They're very usable.
How do you make a 5-bedroom house into 1,650 feet? I mean, it's hard, isn't it? How do you
tough.
do that?
It's creative. You need to be creative. Our architect is very good at space planning. He knows where the inches count. You know, he knows that the minimum code for a toilet is 30, but you'd rather have 32. On a tub, you kind of want 32 or 34, at least in a master. And then where do you spend the space? We put some of it into master bedroom closets. We put some of it into kitchens, and we take a lot of it from circulation space. So there's not a lot of hallway in these houses. There's not a lot of walkway space. It's mostly living space.
So you're exposing living space to the outside?
You do some of that as well, and that's a big component. Little tiny dining room doesn't service a 5-bedroom house, but a big lanai on the outside of the house will service as a dining room. So you can substitute some of the dining space for living room, so you have a big enough living room, have a small breakfast area, and then put the dining out in the lanai. Similarly, one of the bedrooms comes out of a 2-car garage, so it becomes a 1-car garage. Now you have a bedroom and a bathroom. What do you do with the parking? So there's parking that's in the front driveway. So you end up with 3 parking spaces in the driveway and 1 in the garage. It's a big house. You need a lot of cars. So it's just a matter of creatively allocating where you put that space.
How long has this been going on? I mean, it sounds like this is down to a science already. But you know, was this happening in the 50s, or was this sort of the child of the 50s?
I think that it was probably even happening before that. I like to think about my grandparents. My grandparents, or my grandfather grew up on Kauai, and he had a house on Kauai, and he was thought as a relatively successful guy. But his house was 1,100 square feet, and they had 1 car, and by today's standards, he was poor. By those standards, he was doing pretty well, and so it's sort of blossomed. The average house in 1970 was 1,500 square feet. Average house today is 2,100 square feet.
Interesting.
So
I would have thought the other way.
You would have thought the other way.
Yeah.
But we are living with more, and we have to remember that. So we don't necessarily need as much, but you do want. I mean, you want your wine fridge, and you want your air conditioner, during the Kona weather days. And so what's important about energy efficient housing, or how efficient housing, is to make sure that you're spending that energy where you really want to be spending that energy. And being able to make those choices. I think between the 80s and the 2000s, we kind of let the ball go a little bit. We ran away with it a little bit. Energy prices were pretty cheap, and so people weren't focusing on
air conditioning.
They wanted the air conditioning, but they didn't do it they didn't need to make it that efficient. So what we did was we took a standard house and we put an air conditioner in it, and we tried to put the least expensive air conditioner in it, rather than looking at it from a long-term perspective. Least expensive today is how much do I have to pay a month, not how much do I have to pay today. It wasn't always like that. So that's kind of how we look at things. I'm a finance major. I went to Baylor and I got a degree in finance.
So how did you get from there to working in Gentry?
Well, I grew up here, fortunately, and then went to college on the mainland. I worked for a company called Emerald Homes, which is owned by D.R. Horton now, and they're an energy leader
on the mainland
in Texas, of all places, sort of the energy capital. You wouldn't think that they would be energy efficient, but they're selling energy. They know what it costs, and so they were.
Horton's a pretty advanced company. Isn't
it? They were pretty advanced. So Emerald Homes was a home builder that specifically focused on energy efficiency in Houston. And I wanted to come home, and I applied with D.R. Horton, and they weren't hiring at the time, so I went and found a job with Gentry. And Gentry has, one of the benefits of Gentry is it's a family-owned company, so you can really turn on a dime in a family-owned company. It's much harder in a big public corporation.
Gentry is more than just Hawaii, though, isn't it?
We're just Hawaii.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tom Gentry started in Vacaville, California, but he came to Hawaii and he became successful in Hawaii. So we're responsible for YPO by Gentry and some of Enchanted Lakes and some of Haiku, and then of course Eva.
You built a lot of houses.
We built a lot of houses.
Okay, I want to talk about that right after this break. That's McKibbin Mist, purchasing contracts manager, member of the design team for Gentry Homes. And here we're talking about the state of clean energy and the perfect energy house. We're going to get to the elements of that in a little while. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. You'll see.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on the ThinkTech digital series. The show is every Wednesday from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and I want you to watch this show because I think that when we talk with artists on the show about what they do, how they do it, and most importantly, why they do it, I believe that it resonates within each of us, and we find something inside of ourselves that brings us closer to all of humanity. That's what arts are there to do, and that's what I'm here to do on this show. That's Center Stage. It's on every Wednesday from 2 to 3 o'clock. I hope to see you there.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with McKibbin Mist, purchasing and contracts manager for Gentry Homes, also a member of the design team. and I think he's been responsible for building a lot of homes in Hawaii. Let me go to that. You know, one of the issues that we keep hearing from, for example, Castle and Cook and others, and the economists, is that in order to, you know, sustain the population, however the demographic works, we need something like I don't know, 12,000 units per annum.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. What do you think it is per annum?
I like to say 0.5% of the housing stock per year.
Which is what?
I think it's about 1,500 houses.
1,500.
Yeah.
Maybe I just have the number.
You might have one extra zero.
One extra zero.
Yeah.
Okay, 1,500.
Which is still a lot of houses.
This is necessary in order to satisfy people coming out of school, starting work, all that, families, whatnot, not wanting to live with their parents anymore.
A little bit of population growth.
Population
I mean,
growth.
you want to grow some, otherwise you end up like Detroit, or at least that's how the
Yeah,
economists.
you can't go flat on this.
You don't want to go flat.
And you know, so you really must do that. And the what I've heard many times is that we're not doing it. We're not doing actually keeping up.
We're not even close.
Not even close. This is a serious problem because it ultimately has a societal effect on the community. So how much of that is Gentry? I mean, how many houses are you building roughly?
You know, right this year we're going to build 150. When I started working for Gentry, we built 450, and we've sort of slowly come down and down and down from that.
This is because
there's a scarcity of zoned land. Zoned land is really tight. There are only a couple big parcels left, and trying to get through the regulatory process is difficult. There's a lot of community opposition to any sort of development, and so it slows the development process down, and thus the number of available housing units gets more and more and more constricted. And it's one of those problems that seems to only get worse as we have more people. The more people we have, the more people don't want other people to come, and so the more people don't donate to the political action groups that fight development.
Yeah. The old story, right?
It's a circular problem.
Yeah. It's like it's very interesting. We had a program a few months ago. I forget the exact subject, but it was the new era in Hawaii politics, last July, I think. And our keynote was Steve Petronic, who is the editor for Hawaii Business, and his proposition was that newcomers were coming largely because they wanted the benefits of this pristine environment everybody talks about. And they would come, and the first thing they would do after they got their own dream house would be to try to shut down anybody else.
No, that's
they
true.
Became environmentalists to exclude other people and preserve the environment for them.
It's true. It's interesting watching the farm bill on Maui and the opponents versus the proponents of it. And almost seems to me like most of the opponents are all living in resort developments, and all the proponents are all living in old Hawaiian housing stock.
This is really a problem because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's gonna constrict everyone. So okay, so you say it's housing stock, but that ultimately housing stock, that is land, can be turned over or made zoned properly for housing by governmental authorities, right?
That's true, and they're trying. I mean, the governmental authorities are trying. Ho'opili is a good example. That's the one everybody's sort of looking at right now, and it's I can't remember how many houses it is. It's a lot of houses, though. It's like 10,000 or something like that. It's within the urban boundary, but it's also on old ag land, and pretty much all the land that is interesting for development is on old ag land, because it's either old ag land or it's ridges and watershed, and so you're always going to be developing on ag land if you're developing in new sites. One of the benefits to developing a new site and developing horizontal construction versus vertical construction like Kaka'ako is that horizontal construction is significantly less expensive to build. I mean, like 1/3 the cost of vertical construction. And that's a function of how much energy goes in to be able to build the product.
I mean, it takes more energy to build vertical.
It takes way more energy to build vertical. Concrete is expensive because concrete takes a lot of gasoline, a lot of steel, big machines digging rock out of the ground, and lots of shipping and lots of weight. So
heavy to move it.
So it's heavy to move it. Versus building vertical, you're building mostly, have some concrete for the foundation, but once you're past the foundation, you're building out of sticks. And if you look at a house that's built out of sticks, they're just, you know, it's a stick in a space and a stick in a space and a stick in a space. So the density of that material is much, much less. And so that's where you're getting the majority of your cost savings.
But you talk about new housing, and you know, not to get too far off our topic, but it strikes me that we have large areas that should be redeveloped.
Oh, I totally agree with you.
And I mean, one example of that in my perception of it is Mo'ili Ili. There's a lot of houses there. In fact, there was something in the paper only a week ago about some two-story walk-up, you know, that got redeveloped, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And you can go in there, and it's not that expensive. You don't have to start from scratch, and open it up a little bit. Use that architectural vision.
Yeah.
And make it nice. And it's not really vertical, but it's doable.
No, I think you're right. I think that is going to be one of the housing solutions, is to go in and redevelop stuff. Whether you take something that's already existing, that's probably got good bones to it, and then refinish all the old stuff and put the new technologies in it, that's a great way to do it. Or if you find something that's so dilapidated that it needs to come down, and then repurpose the land into a higher and better use. And you see a lot of that in areas such as Kaimaki, and you get a lot more density on the same. You had a house that was 600, 800 square feet and housed maybe 3 people at the most, and it was on a 20,000 square foot lot, and now the developer's going in and putting 3,000 square foot houses on it that have a 2-bedroom, 2-bath downstairs and 3-bedroom, 2-bath upstairs. So you're housing 25 people on a spot where you used to house 3.
So do you favor small developments or large ones? I mean, so you talk about in one moment, you know, the Ho'opili project with 10,000 houses, a lot of houses, creates a whole new world.
Right.
Then talk on the other hand about, you know, doing a building here and a building there, say in Mo'ili Ili. I mean, you wouldn't find one big developer doing all of Mo'ili Ili. You'd find little guys.
You do. You find little guys.
So which do you favor?
Well, you know, I like them both. There's inherent benefits to being a large developer. You can go in and you can spend a lot more money in the common spaces and in the infrastructure and all those things that need sort of an overseer to be able to do. And in Mo'ili Ili, that overseer is going to have to be the government, because that's the only person that can do it. But you need both, and a big developer can't be nimble and go in and pick off 1 lot or 2 lots at a time and be able to stomach the overhead of his big team and doing that. So you need them both. And as we talked about before, we have a housing problem. I mean, we have a huge population versus housing issue, and it's not going to be solved by any one guy.
No, you know what, though? It's kind of a dream. And I remember, what's her name now? Christine Cam.
Okay.
Christine, developer.
Yep.
A small developer.
Yeah.
Avalon is the name.
Well, she's not that small anymore.
Oh, good. I'm happy to hear that. She spoke at one of our programs, and it struck me that why not be a developer? Maybe this will happen to you.
Hey, it's
Why
fun.
not get out there and start your own development company and help Hawaii? Because it's a community benefit to do that.
It is.
And people say, oh, developers, they make so much money, they're evil. Not really.
Not really.
They're actually very community-minded, and they're not making that much money.
They don't make that much money.
They do a favor for all of us by developing and redeveloping the land, yeah.
No, and we want to support our local developers, because you support the local developer, and then the money gets to stay here and generally gets put back into the community's charities, and local developers understand our system and make it easy on everybody else. The building department likes it when you come down there with a set of plans that is approvable. They don't want to look at it 2 or 3 different times, but if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to get kicked back 2 or 3 different times.
So here we have, to move down the pike of our discussion, here we have basically 3 kinds of things. We have the greenfield, large tracts of homes, which we have to do in order to keep up. We have the redevelopment, such as in Mo'ili Ili and other neighborhoods, that are getting old. I would say Kalihi, but I think in Kalihi we probably have to do a lot of demolition to make modern housing.
Yeah.
And we have Kaka'ako, which is more of a new model because it's not just tall buildings. There's a lot of tall buildings all in a defined area. That's different. So the one common denominator on all of this is that you can build it better from an energy point of view by doing certain things, and that's what I want to explore with you. I want to find out with you, what are the things that you look to do when you set up either a greenfield, redevelopment area, or a vertical?
So I think you want to look specifically at the energy usage of a building first. It's easy to put PV on a house. You can power your pool pumps, your inefficient air conditioners, and everything. But it makes a lot more sense to go through and pick out things that are going to save you energy before you produce your energy. So for us, we're developing pretty densely, and all these communities that we're talking about are dense developments, and so you end up seeing a lot of central air conditioning. So making that central air conditioning system as efficient as possible. You use central AC for two reasons. One reason is because it cools your house. The second reason, and probably way more important, is that it keeps your house quiet. So if you're living really close to your neighbors, tight to your neighbors, you don't want to disturb them, and you certainly don't want them disturbing you. And air conditioning can really help that. You don't have your windows open, so you don't hear the guy yelling outside. And air conditioning can be a huge energy hog. So you need to make sure you insulate well, and you need to make sure that you're using a very efficient equipment. You want the 50 mile per gallon air conditioner, not the 8 mile per gallon air conditioner. Lighting is a big one. You want to have the right amount of lights. You want to have the lights that are shining on your pictures and the ones that shine on your sink and the under-counter ones and all that kind of stuff. But you don't want too many because every single light bulb draws electricity. You can also use more efficient light bulbs. Now we're using LEDs. A couple years ago when they did the new Hawaiian home, they were using CFLs. And prior to that, they were using incandescents.
Not too easy to change from CFLs to LEDs.
You can now. You can get a screw in.
LED. Yeah, true.
If you put the pin fluorescent bulbs in your house, it's a little tougher. But if you just use the regular medium base fluorescent bulb, then you can get a medium base LED and screw it in.
Yeah, that's great.
Two benefits: one, they're cooler, and two, they use less electricity.
I don't think people pay enough attention to lighting, not only because of the energy considerations, but because lighting is directly related to your state of mind.
It certainly can create a mood.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And that means a whole lifestyle.
Yeah. One, architecture too. Architecture is important. You wake up in a bad house, you go to work not nearly as happy as you woke up in a good house. And the flow with the building that you go into, it makes a big difference. If every morning you get pissed off because you're coming out of your driveway and you have to risk your life to be able to get on the street, you're going to be a little more stressed than the guy who has a turn lane that can get in pretty easily.
Yeah, so, if you wake up or walk around and you have the sense of peace and
serenity
harmony,
and calm,
it's like feng shui.
Definitely.
Like
no,
the feng shui of energy.
It matters. It matters. That's why you need experts doing the development. It makes a big difference.
We're going to take a short break again. McKibbin Mist, a purchasing and construction manager, member of the design team for Gentry Homes and Builders here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. We're talking about the perfect energy house, and when we come back, we'll take a look at some pictures that he brought with him. Just wait there for a minute. We'll be right back.
This is Alice Lee Hagan, host of ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. My show here at ThinkTech Hawaii is every Thursday from 3 to 4 in the afternoon. I bring in interesting guests from Hawaii, the mainland, and hopefully international guests in the future. Do join us on Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. Aloha.
Okay, we're back. We're live. I'm here with McKibbin Mist, purchasing and contracts manager of Gentry Homes, also a member of the design team there. We're talking about the perfect energy house, and there's really a lot to talk about. It's a lot of expertise. Here in Hawaii, we have spent some time figuring this out, and
We have.
It's something we can and should take advantage of. So let's see some photographs. What's first up on the photographs? There's a house. What do you think of that?
All right. So there's one of our sandalwood models, and if you look, probably the most important energy efficient feature on this house is sitting up there on the roof. And we all know what that is. That's a
PV.
Solar hot water panel.
Ah, sorry.
Solar hot water panel is probably the easiest way to save energy.
You like that better than PV that drives, an electric water heater?
Yes, because so the difference between thermal energy and photovoltaic energy is that thermal energy stores itself. So you heat hot water, you put it in your hot water tank. It can still be hot in the morning when you get up. PV, if you want to use PV at night, it doesn't work. You either have to produce your PV energy during the day and put it in a battery, or produce your PV energy during the day and have HECO sell it to somebody else for you, and then you draw energy out of their grid, which they're either having somebody burn coal or burn some sort of fuel for you to be able to use.
Suppose I had a big water tank, and I heated up the water in the tank and let it sit there.
That would work. If you use PV to heat your water, that also works.
Which do you prefer?
I prefer the thermal. I think that it's a little less complicated. I think it's a little bit more cost effective, and it's very proven technology. It's worked for a lot of years.
For a while.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at that picture for more hints on the energy perfect house. Oh, this is another picture. Is this the same house or a different house?
That's a different house.
Wait, let's go back to the first one because there's more hints there. Okay, yeah, then that was a house which I could spot stuff on that house that I knew was going to be. And the funny thing is, there's not a lot of lot line involved. These houses can be fairly close.
Oh, they're real close.
But they don't offend anyone, and
No.
you can have your own privacy, and it's really like high tech. The whole thing is high tech, and I think that's the house in Kaimoki. It was like that.
Yeah.
It was very little space on the side of the house.
There's not much space. So those are zero lot line lots, which means that you only have access to one side of your house. Your neighbor has access to the other side of your house.
I see. Okay.
Makes the yard a little bit wider.
So what else do you see there?
Couple of things. You've got dual pane low E windows. So the windows have a thermal barrier to them. So if the UV hits the window, it gets reflected out rather than absorbing back into the house. The dual panes provides a little bit of insulation in them. The yard space is interesting. In this community, the yards are sort of interspersed. So that yard is in the front yard. The house next door to it has the yard in the backyard. So if they're back to back, your yard space and your neighbor's yard space don't really interact with each other.
This is good.
So there's a bit of privacy there.
Yes. I mean, it's kind of an American joke about, talking with a cup of coffee over the backyard fence.
Yeah.
I prefer not to have that conversation.
Right.
I want some privacy in my backyard.
Well, invite him over with a phone call.
Really? Yeah, there you go.
If you like him.
Yeah, if you like them.
No, you can see the cross ventilation is thought of. You have windows on the corners of each of the rooms.
Do I see any PV? Is there PV there?
You do see PV. There are PVs on those also. So
it doesn't look like there's a lot of it, though. You haven't really overdone it. And I think a lot of people do overdo it.
Well, that sort of comes back to what we were talking about earlier. If you can save the energy first and then produce it later, you don't have to produce nearly as much. So you don't need as many PV panels on your roof.
And then you taught me one other thing. If you can save the space.
If you save the
then
space.
Then save the energy after that.
Right.
You're really doing well.
You are really doing well. That's a cool house. It's got a flex space. So we put 2 barn doors on the side of the garage. We're in Hawaii. A lot of people like to use their garages as an entertaining space. And so we've opened it up to the courtyard, so you can use it that way if you want to.
That's a great idea.
Pull the cars out on a Saturday and have them barbecue.
And what is that? The trusses in the roof over the garage, is that open?
Those are decorative, open trusses.
Okay.
They're actually, we insulate. One of the things we do that's different is we spray foam insulation. So we have a foam that spray out of a gun, and it seals the cavities. And we take that up through the walls and then all the way through the attic. So your attic space is insulated as well as your wall space. And so any of the heat that would get into your attic doesn't, because it's insulated out. And so that ends up, we let that be conditioned space. So if you go up in your attic, it's actually just as cool as the inside of your house. And that does two things. One, you know, computers work more efficiently when they're cool, so do air conditioners. So if you can put the air conditioning equipment in conditioned space, they're going to work more efficiently. Two, if you have your ductwork in conditioned space, it's going to lose less heat. Just little things that all add up. There are a lot of little things. Same like our housing problem. We got to do a lot of little things that all add up to helping.
It's a thoughtful issue, you know. If you're thoughtful about it, you can come up with a longer list of things that will have more effect. Okay, let's go to the next picture. And that was a smaller picture. Yeah, what's that?
So that is a single-family detached condominium. That looks like that 5-bedroom house that I was telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
That's a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, extremely efficient house, small footprint, small energy use. Without PV, that house would probably cost you $180 a month, including the air conditioning.
That's a fraction of what most people pay, I mean, who don't have PV.
Yeah.
Where's the yard? Is it on the left or the right or both?
The yard is behind that house. There's a walk around on both sides. This is a single-family detached condo community. So it's called Parkside, and there are multiple parks throughout the community. So little tiny pocket parks. So you'll have a house, a house, a house, a house, a house, and then a park. A house, a house, a house, a house, a house, and then a park.
Great idea. That's so efficient.
So everybody can share you share the yard space. The yard space is maintained by the association. And then there's also a rec center with a pool and a barbecue area. So if you want to have a big party, go down there on Saturday, check out the rec center, and be able to share it with all your friends.
That's a great idea. Where is Parkside?
Parkside's out in Eva. So
Okay.
Eva Beach, Eva by Gentry.
Now, this takes us actually to the question of appliances, because when you build a house, I mean, when Gentry builds a house, or any Horton, whatever.
I forget about appliances, but they're real important energy efficiency-wise.
Yeah, I mean, so are you including the you must
We
be
include
including
the appliances. We include the appliances. They're all Energy Star rated. What's interesting about Energy Star is some Energy Star is not the same as other Energy Stars.
Really? Tell us.
So, for instance, a refrigerator. Refrigerators are all categorized in their own different categories. So an over-under refrigerator is categorized differently than a side-by-side refrigerator. And thus, the energy efficiency requirements to hit Energy Star are different. So if you want the most energy efficient refrigerator, you go with the over-under. You can also get an Energy Star side-by-side, but it may not be as efficient as a non-Energy Star over-under. It's kind of interesting.
Got it. So there's a big difference between the over-under and the horizontal.
Yep. And so when you're shopping, you need to look at that little yellow energy guide, and you can compare them that way. That's the best way to compare them. It's about dollars per year.
I'm impressed. We got one more picture. Okay, that's a nice looking house.
Yeah. So
is that on a corner, or am I wrong?
That's our sales office. It's one in from the corner, but we left the lot next door to it out, which is why it looks like it's on a corner. You can really see the photovoltaic panels and the hot water panels. So you have a 120-gallon hot water heater panel on the right, and on the left you have a 1 kW PV system, which 1 kW will save you about $50 a month. So if you wanted to net zero that house, you probably want a 4 kW system, and there's more roof space on the back that you could add additional PV to. So we put in a starter system, which is what HECO would rather have, is a bunch of people producing a little bit for their house, and then you'd be able to pull as a community out of the grid at a lower rate, rather than having a 20 kW system on one house where the guy was pushing a lot of energy back in and then pulling a lot of energy out. That's sort of where their main issue is. I can be sympathetic with that. But so we're putting on a starter system that gets you going.
But you can add to that. Obviously, you have extra roof space there you can put on. It's not a big deal because the inverters come with the panels anyway.
That's true.
So yeah, I mean, and I want to just visit with one point you mentioned, and that, or at least suggested to me, and that is that frequently when you're dealing on I don't want to call it door to door, but when you're dealing on an ad hoc contract for an existing house, put on a bunch of panels, and they make a spreadsheet for you, I think that in many cases it's an oversale. and you wind up with far more panels, a bigger system than you really need,
Right.
In the hopes that you're going to sell it back to the utility,
Right.
which obviously doesn't work very often anymore. Might have worked once, but it doesn't work now, not with the interconnect issue. So I think, I think part of this, I think what I hear you saying, at least for when you have the choice and when you can make an intelligent decision, is not to overdo it, maybe underdo it even, and then build it up as time goes by to what you find you really need for your lifestyle and family and your appliances and your use of energy, instead of building it too big and then winding up with extra capacity.
Yeah, I think that's if everybody built it too big and there was too much extra capacity, at some point we'd have to stop putting power into the grid, and so it's sort of unfair to your neighbors. If you take all the capacity, then they don't get to put PV on their house, and that's not a real fair thing. And it doesn't make a lot of sense either. If you say you spend $100 grand on a PV system, and you don't use $25,000 of that system, you're just putting power back into the grid. Are you really saving money?
No, right? Because at the end of the day, you've
made that invested.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, it's funny that nobody has to go to HECO at the beginning and say, look, what's the appropriate size for us? There's no control in the marketplace like that, or any authority. So if I can come to you and I can say, I want to sell you a $100,000, PV system, and you don't know the difference, and you say, where do I sign? That's a bad result, and there's nobody ever going to say that wasn't the right thing.
Well, that's why we're seeing the interconnection issues that we're seeing now.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, well, let's go into more of the appliances, because I think, at the end of the day, it's sort of like medicine. I can build a great hospital with the best outfitted systems in the world, but at the end of the day, it's the responsibility of the patient to take care of his own health. So I guess so we talked about flowing the air. We've talked about air conditioning and designing space, designing lighting systems. We haven't talked about fans much.
Fans are a big deal.
Yeah.
We put a fan junction box in every single bedroom and every single living room. Ceiling fans can make your house feel 10 degrees cooler. Excuse me. They're a big deal, and they're not something to forget about. They are so much more efficient than using an air conditioning system.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that when I went to see the Kaneohe project. A lot of fans in there, a lot of fans.
Another thing that we do that's different than a lot of other people, and we get to do it because we do that foam insulation, is we get to control the humidity. So if we can drop the humidity, we drop the humidity in the house to 40 to 50%. Usually it's 80% outside, 40 to 50 inside. When you drop it 40 to 50%, you don't have to cool your house as much. You can put your house air conditioner at 78 degrees. So you're only dropping the ambient temperature 4 or 5 degrees, but you're sucking the moisture out of the air, so it feels a lot cooler.
Well, scientifically it is. We did a program about the Whole Foods installation in Kailua, and they have desiccation, which dries the air on the roof. So that what they do is they have an air conditioning system, conventional air conditioning system, which is using intake air, which is desiccated, very dry, and it's like half the cost of running the air conditioning system.
So much cheaper
really
to do it that
better. way. And that whole thing translates into a better lifestyle too, if you can desiccate the air somehow.
The other thing that we talked about a little bit, appliances are a really big deal. They're not as big of a deal in a new house though, because you can almost only buy energy efficient appliances. Retrofitting old houses, it's so worth it. You have a 10-year-old refrigerator, you should get rid of it and put it in a new refrigerator.
Even if it's not worn down, even
if it's still working, it'll pay off. It pays off. You can talk to Servco or one of the other appliance distributors, and they'll tell you exactly what it'll pay off at. But it will pay off for you, and pretty quickly.
So let me ask you one more question, then we have to run. What's in the future on this? I mean, you're the purchasing manager. You're probably looking at all kinds of technologies coming down the pike, checking out whatever the sources are in the mainland, whatever anybody is doing that would make this even better. What are you looking at these days?
Oh, we're starting to look at water, actually. I don't know if you've noticed your water bill, but the water bill is starting to get to be a bigger concern in the household now, and they keep going up. And so we're looking at a lot of. We already do a lot of water efficient appliances, but I see water reuse coming down the pipe at some point. There's some health issues to that the designers are going to have to work out, sanitation-wise, being able to use water a couple different times. But that's good for a couple reasons. One, it's expensive to pump water uphill into a tank so that you can suck it out, and two, it's expensive to process the water after it goes down your pipes. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, and I see probably not houses overall, but definitely starter houses getting smaller. You know, maybe we'll start seeing some micro apartments and stuff like you see in Tokyo and other big cities.
Sure. And with technology, especially energy technology, we can make that work.
Yeah.
We can be the leader in the country, actually.
Well, we've got the most incentive, that's for sure. Highest electric rate in the country will get us. I mean, has gotten us a long way. You know, that's been a positive, I think, for the industry.
McKibbin Mist, purchasing and contract manager for Gentry Homes, and a member of the design team there, taking us for a tour of the perfect energy house here in Hawaii. In Hawaii, the state of clean energy. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
McKibbin.
thanks for having me on.
That was
That
a
was fun.
great guest.